Um, yeah, so maybe the question is to you is like, you have a kid. I have, I mean, well, you have your kid's much older. Mine's are still in school, but you know,
Hmm.
what should we be telling our children, our future generations about AI? What should we be telling them to do?
I mean, all they can do is embrace and try to understand it.
Mhm.
Um, but even with my own daughter, I'm in the same challenge to where she's not quite sure what she wants to do. Some days she wants to do the environmental law. Sometimes
Yeah,
I it's hard for me to relate to that because I never had that problem. I always knew I was I knew where I was headed, right? I knew what I gravitated to. I knew what my passion was.
yeah,
Um, so to not have that passion, to not have that focus, is weird for me. It's much harder for me to relate to, and I would love to tell my growing up. I told my daughter, just do what makes you happy. It's fine. Life will be okay.
yeah,
Um, there's still truth to that,
yeah.
but you also have to pay your bills to some way and play the game, in that area.
Mm.
So you have to find something that's harder to replace. I'm not sure environmental law was the best choice for trying to get her into, because after seeing how easily law and attorneys are replaced with AI, because a lot of it's just understanding knowledge of the legal code. And that's one thing AI does very well, is turn large, boring documents into quick reads, that kind of thing. So it's there's not a great answer for that question that I have, really. That's one of those futures I can't predict because I don't see a perfect outcome. That's the problem. I don't have a great answer because there isn't a great answer. It feels like two trains colliding at each and running in opposite directions, and they're going to collide. The impact of that collision, our society and technology, when those two things do finally collide in some form, I would love to say it's going to be clean and we're going to figure it all out and it's not going to be messy.
Yeah,
Most people are reactive; they're not proactive. Our
yeah,
nation, especially, governments are very reactive.
yeah.
Congress is one of the most reactive groups around.
Sure.
It's like that all over the world.
Yeah.
Very few places are actually proactive to this. So I don't really know what to say. We're going to be reacting to it. How well we react to it, I don't know. I watched the fight to get universal health care over the last 20 years in America.
Yeah.
I can only imagine what the UBI fight's going to be, because this is, healthcare is something that's a little more understandable. I'm going to give you free money for doing nothing. Why?
It's just very against what
It's not
is.
capitalist in the least. It's
Yeah,
completely opposite of
yeah,
how we were raised.
yeah,
Even for myself, I'm a pretty liberal guy, and I have trouble with it going, man, I just don't see how this makes sense. How do we motivate people? How do we get people to do things? I've always got up and came to work because I got a paycheck.
yeah,
It's a different concept. I'm not saying it can't be done. It's just we're not good at change,
yeah.
right? That's our problem. We're not very good with change as a society.
Yeah.
When COVID hit, we could not even stay indoors for 2 months.
No, yeah,
We couldn't even. That was a detrimental thing to our society.
yeah. A lot of other
Yeah.
crazy stuff happened during that time, right?
Yes.
Um,
Yes. So I mean, it's how society reacts, and if COVID was any indicator, um, I can't go the glass half full route on that one. Unfortunately, we didn't do so well in COVID. It was a struggle for us,
yeah, I mean,
at
it's.
least in the States.
I mean, yeah. I was gonna say like in the States, because we have such a capitalistic, pick yourself up by your bootstraps, point
Yeah.
of life. Like sometimes we even refuse help because we want to show that we can do it on our own, right? That's
Yes.
the American spirit, right? Like
Yeah.
AI is going to be a challenge, but AI is going to push that, in my opinion. It's going to
Yeah.
push the conversation. I think is, other parts of the world, because they have a different mentality about life.
Hmm.
There's certain other countries that are already adopting it to certain different degrees and all that
Yeah.
stuff. We're gonna have an easier time to do that. And the only hope that I have is like as Americans that we see what other countries have done and try to implement when successful, try to implement it for ourselves, because I think we got to really get away from like you're either black or white. It has to be some gray area in between, right? Like
Yeah.
maybe it works like this in Spain, but in America there's a version of it. Like we can't just say, oh, UBI is evil or
Yeah.
whatever. It's,
We'll have to have some kind of outcome for it. We'll have a solution. How good it is, I don't know. How happy it is. Even for myself, though, I mean, I've enjoyed a pretty wealthy lifestyle. You've enjoyed a pretty wealthy lifestyle. If you had to give up your Lexus for, $1,200 a month Social Security check, which is equivalent to what it is, how happy are we going to be too? I don't know how well I personally would do on UBI because I have been wealthy. It's giving up that. I worked hard for that my whole life. Giving that up would be really difficult. So, I mean, I see them, for people growing up with this for the first time, it's more palatable. If you're a starving 20-year-old with no future, and the government's going to give you $2,000 a month to just chill and watch Bluey all day, sure, okay, we can do that. That's going to be easier. Someone such as myself that is driven and motivated, or your CEOs, or all of these other people that are,
you want to do something,
used to, getting up every day and accomplishing like a purpose-driven life. How do we find purpose? How do we find happiness? How do we find accomplishment when those rules are not the same? Are we the ones that will end up doing the programming and keeping the limited high-spec fields? Possibly. But is there enough for everybody? I don't know.
The way I look at it is this: I don't know the answer, but I'm two minds about it. One is, if UBI existed, I'd be more inclined to take risks and follow my passion, because I know I have a safety net. And I know I have a safety net where I don't have to take a shit job or a job I don't really want. I just go after my passion. I'm like, hey, my passion is to start a gym, for people who likes to run, whatever, and I'll follow, and right now I wouldn't even be able to think about it because there's no safety net. I'm like, I have to go and show up to work and tell my boss that I'm going to do my kick-ass best because I need the money. And that's
got bills to pay.
Whereas if I had UBI, I can probably say, you know what, boss, I don't like you today. So let me just follow my passion. Let me do what I really want to do.
Yeah. I mean, I can see that being part of it.
On the flip side, though, you said it earlier, are a bunch of lazy people, and there are a lot out there in the world. They're just and leech off basically the people who
are doing something. Yeah. And can our society deal with that, though? That's what is the impact of those two groups? Are you going to see a whole different social grouping come together for this? The people who are lazy versus the non-lazy kind of things. There's going to be impact to that. What about inflation? When say, assume 80% of our people are on UBI, of a society, you're essentially on a capped index at that point, because if you raise prices or change prices, you've now affected 80% of your population's income in an area. So is that more of a socialist policy on, economics there? I don't know.
I don't care how you label anymore. At a certain point, technology pushes to a point where, where the form of market or government really has to adapt to it. I mean, it's kind of like we used to walk around everywhere or have horse carriages. Now we have cars that can go over 200 miles an hour, easy.
Yeah.
The concept of how our whole neighborhoods are built because of that has significantly changed. You think of housing in Europe where they're more ways in America and China where it's just like expansive freeways and whatnot, and that's just how we kind of have to adapt. Like UBI just has to be a thing that maybe, or some version of it that we haven't figured out. or
I see in like Chinese societies and Asian societies that being more prominent and easier transition. They're more. That's already something that's being thought about. It's the problem with American society is our mentality in the way we do things there. For us to get a handout from the government just is such a negative thing. Whereas in other societies, they, even my wife coming from, she came from Turkey, which is like medical care here is a complete, unknown to her. She has no concept of how this system could even work, and the fact that I was like, yeah, I've never really been to the doctor until I was, only my 40s because it's expensive and I don't go. But she's like, I used to go 2 or 3 times a year. It was free. You just walk down and go in.
Go in, right? Yeah. I mean, I have to say, like, for me, the closest thing that America has come to that, and the only reason why I am a proponent of, more universal healthcare is Kaiser. I grew up and one thing that I always knew growing up is like, I can walk into any Kaiser, I'll get taken care of. My mom paid and everything, and mom and dad had to pay for it, but it was just like a copay, back then. And when I had to experience, the PPO and HMO for the first time when working, I was horrified.
Yeah.
And to this day, I'm still, I'm a Kaiser family because it feels like that's the closest version America has to universal health care that the rest of the world.
You just have to make sure there's a Kaiser facility near where you're getting hurt. Don't bleed out in Alabama, essentially.
Yep.